Very good and interesting questions. Thank you for having me this afternoon here. I'm delighted to be here. Well, I was born in Quito, Ecuador, an old city a 2,000-year-old city at 9,000 feet on the equator. And I had a very interesting childhood, but not always a happy childhood. But that's not why I came here. I came here because my parents moved here, and I came along with them. And in a long way, and that's a long story in itself, but I did grow up in a very interesting culture, on a very interesting old ancient city filled with indigenous cultures, Spanish European culture. I was raised not only by my mom, but also by my grandfather, who lived next door, and he was a world famous geographer and astronomer, botanist, book writer, college professor. And he used to come for lunch every day. And he was a great influence on me because I actually learned stuff from him. And then I would have to go to real school. And I did not like real school. It was a painful experience. I made friends. I still have friends from that time, dear friends. And now I look back fondly on those memories. But as a child, it was difficult. I preferred to stay home and play, and then learn everything that I needed to learn from a library we had in the house and from my grandfather. And so when I was 10 years old, my mom married an English diplomat, and we left Ecuador by ship, and it took a month to cross to Europe because we were going to relocate to live in his country, in England. And it was during that ship voyage that I fell in love with painting, because I had brought a little box of watercolors and some paper. And that's what I would do, is I would look out the porthole at the Pacific and then the Atlantic Ocean and just paint the dolphins, the flying fish, the ship. And it made me feel really good about myself. And then when we got to England, I started to learn to speak English right away. There were no remedial English lessons for anybody there. You just learned. And so it was a wonderful experience, because England is an incredible country full of history and museums and culture. And I loved it, and machines and stuff, that we didn't always see it in the Andes back in the 50s and 60s. It was very old and very colonial, very quiet. But the weather was great. Now, the weather in England wasn't as good. And so I loved America. And finally it was time to, a little bit later, my stepfather got posted to El Salvador. And we went there to live, and I went to high school there. And when it was time to choose where to go to university, it was either go to England or go to the United States. And I chose the United States because I had visited San Francisco for half an hour one day. And I just totally fell in love with it. Such a beautiful, incredible city of magic. And so I went to university there to study business. And I wasn't very good at it. I was actually a terrible student, but a passionate student about life. I was in this beautiful, fantastic city, under no obligation to do anything but be an explorer of life. And I discovered that I wanted to go back to painting too. A love that I had, because when I smelled paint, when I drew, I always felt really happy. And so I told my parents that, you know what, forget the business thing. Thank you for having paid for the last few years of business school, but I'm going to become an artist. I'm going to study art. And my mom said, but I've never seen you draw. And I said, well, maybe you weren't really watching, because parents have certain views of what their kids should be, and she thought I should be some sort of academic professor or something. She thought I'd be good at that. But I love books, but I don't like books. They make me sleepy. And I walk into the library, I almost fell asleep walking in here. But but my father was totally against the idea, and that's when I actually became a real immigrant here in the United States, because I fled from his house in Georgia, where he took me to cure me of my art bug. He took me to live with him. I was still pretty young. And I didn't like the idea, so I told my brother to take me to the freeway. And I had $120, a little black suitcase, and a sleeping bag. And he took me to the freeway, and I left. And I never went back home again. I mean, I did see my parents again and all that, but it was when I actually left. And I got picked up by a bus of migrant farm workers in this shabbiest bus you can imagine. And the minute I walked in, they were nice to me. They gave me yogurt. They sat me down. They took me all the way to Kentucky, where I had some friends. And I hitchhiked to New York with some drug addicts who almost died in the car when we got to Harlem. I stayed there for a couple of days and hitchhiked back to San Francisco, where I had friends. And I started exploring how to become an artist for real. And I took art classes for $1 a class in adult education. And little by little, I grew my portfolio of creations until finally, eventually, I got my Master's of Fine Art at the University of California in Santa Barbara. But before that, I got my Bachelor's of Fine Arts at San Francisco Art Institute, too, which was my dream school, which was also a nightmare place to be at. It was a place where you really weren't taught much, but you had to learn everything for yourself. But in that fantastic city, in a beautiful building, with all these crazy artistic people who all wanted to be, if I make it to 30 and I'm famous, I can die then. Which is really not a great life goal to have. It's a very romantic, self-destructive kind of thing. And I'm glad that I never stayed in that mindset, because I'm 69 now and I feel that I'm trying to stay as young as possible every day and be happy. It's not about fame. Fame is it's a thing. Life is an experience. So for me to stay alive now is the most important thing. So that's how I came to the United States, from Ecuador to Europe, El Salvador, and the United States. And I've been here ever since. I've gone back to Ecuador many, many times, and I love it there. And I've even worked there as a tour guide. I traveled all over the place and read my grandfather's books, stayed in a solar observatory on the equator. I mean, it's life, right? It's fantastic. And then you get married and have kids. And then you get a different life, an amazing life where you actually serving people. You're a servant to all these little, hey, Daddy, give me the daddy name. Watch Elmo with me. And then you volunteer in schools, right? And that's how we met. Because you're always volunteering if you want to be a real good parent. You're always trying to be in their lives as much as possible. Because in the end, that they'll go away, right? They leave home and you don't have them there anymore, which also a good thing. Because when they're a little older, they do need to find their own lives. But it's nice that you've created that friendship, that relationship with somebody that is so special to you, with another very special person, your spouse, right? You created this amazing thing called a family. And so I live happily here in Tacoma with a family. And I actually arrived in Tacoma via Seattle. In one of my trips to Ecuador, when I was at the University of California, Santa Barbara, I had a few beers one night and I wrote this great project description and I sent it to the University Research Exploration Program at Berkeley to lead a group of avid art lovers to Ecuador to collect and document the popular art of Ecuador. And I could do this because I had been a tour guide so many times there that I knew my way around the country like crazy, and I knew where to buy baskets, I knew where to buy masks, I knew how to get buses, I knew how to do the whole thing. And so in one of these trips, I met a friend who lived in Redmond, and we got along really well. And once I was done at the University of California, I came up here to visit and pretty much stayed. I tried to leave a few times because the winters here are pretty tough, compared to California weather or Ecuadorian weather, and I like the sun. But opportunity was here, and I kept getting opportunities to show my work, to teach. I settled down. I met my wife, Melanie, and we had children. And eventually, Seattle became too expensive for us to live there, especially as artists. and we only wanted one parent to be working, and that was me as an artist. It's crazy. How can an artist be providing for a family? But we did it for 7 years. My wife didn't go to work, and then she found a job. But we came to Tacoma because we heard that they were looking for artists to move to Tacoma. Amy McBride, who runs the Cultural Vitality department at the city, we had heard about her. We contacted her, said, well, what can you offer? I said, just come on down. We'll make sure you do well. So we came on down, and thanks to her help and just our own endeavors, we have done really well here in Tacoma. We've been here like 22 years now, and we love it. We've raised our kids here, and that's how I came to Tacoma. In a U-Haul truck. And the coasts, too. The coasts are easier for immigrants, I think, than if you go to the heartland of America, because the coasts are the melting pots of the United States. And you'll always find a culture. You'll always find your culture here. I mean, there's always be somebody from around where you came from that you can relate to. But the advice that I would actually maybe give, if I think about it, is I would give to anybody. Be on time, be clean, be honest, work hard, take care of your health. Because if you do that, I think, you lubricate the process of life. Because it doesn't matter. You don't have to meet a racist to have a hard time. You could just have a boss that's not very smart or unpleasant or crazy. And he doesn't have to be a racist. He just has to give you a hard time every day, right? Sure, it's a restaurant. The Folk restaurant is a restaurant with an unusual name that's very close to where I live. And there used to be a Cambodian market called the Vikala market. The work that I was doing then, and I was actually doing a project for Little Saigon in Seattle for a hill climb there, Yesler Terrace, and I was including Vietnamese motifs in the work, and one of them was a person riding a buffalo, and he loved it. And he said, I want one of those. And I said, okay. So we made a deal that I would make him one. He would pay me for it. So I made him one, and one day he came with a wad of money and gave it to me, and I thought, this guy's for real. He was on time, he was clean, honest, fantastic. So he hung it in his restaurant, and he said, one day I want something else here. So along the way, I gave him another person riding a buffalo, which was left over from the project in Seattle. He says, I want something. And he said, that wall there, I want something there. We talked and talked. He told me, it came out. A dragon. Okay, so I went and worked on the dragon. And so I made this pretty big, almost 9 foot by 9 foot dragon, a mosaic dragon with fused glass that has a bowl of pho at the bottom. And I'm really proud of the soup, and I'm proud of the whole thing. It came out great, but I particularly love the way the soup came out. It looks just like the soup. Okay, I fused the glass at the right temperature so you can see the noodles really bubbling in the juice. And so that's the dragon that I have there, and I invite people to go there and have a really good experience having the soup there or any of the other dishes, and have a picture taken with a dragon. And you can email me, and I might send you a little card, a thank you card for showing me how much you appreciate the food and the art. Oh, and nearby, not far from the Folk restaurant, there's the Alberta Canada building, which I was fortunate enough a few years ago. They were remodeling it, and the city had a call for artists. They wanted a mural on the front. And so I went for the interview, and they liked me more than they liked the others. It doesn't always happen. And I got the job. And so first thing I said is, who's Alberta, Canada, right? I mean, that's a fantastic name. I mean, it's Alberta and it's Canada, and so the people in the city said, well, you just got to go down to the library and go to the Northwest room and find out who she was. So I came down here to the library, and I went to the Northwest room, and I talked to a gentleman there I think is now retired. And I said, who's Alberta, Canada? And he got all this stuff out, this microfilm. And I found out that she was a housing advocate, an African-American housing advocate on the hilltop here. And she had passed away a long time before I got this job. And so I researched her life and found out from an obituary who her kids were. And I looked them up on Facebook. And I contacted them, are you Alberta, Canada's daughters? And they said yes. And they provided me with a ton of information about her. And so I used to walk the neighborhood, the hilltop, all the time then. And I used to walk all over the place thinking, I'm like Alberta, right? I'm walking all over this place. She lived here. She cared about this place. And then eventually I managed to sit down in my studio and I folded a piece of paper and I go, oh, I got the idea. And it's when you see the picture of it, you'll see Alberta, Canada looking up at the sky, overlooking the hilltop, looking out of her window. And so I made Alberta, it's called Alberta's window. It's made of glass, fused glass and little pebbles on an aluminum backing. And has lights, by the way, that sometimes work and sometimes don't. I've never been able to figure out the bug. There's a bug in the electricity, and it just doesn't turn on at the right times. It turns on at the weirdest times. And overlooking the hilltop is Alberta taking care of our hilltop. So that's my mosaic. I have several pieces of art in the city. Particularly on the hilltops. I have many in the Tacoma General Hospital and the Mary Bridge Children's Hospital, which I encourage people to go see. There's always a way to go visit, Just pretend to be, I'm so sick. Oh, give me a mosaic. I gotta see a mosaic. And you'll heal right away. Yeah, I have a sculpture there. It's like a 16 or 17 foot metal and glass mosaic sculpture called Phoenix. It's a bird. Phoenix was a bird of rebirth, and the community center didn't exist until like 5 years ago when it was built. And the building came about because a young man was killed by gun in the neighborhood there, and the mom is a powerhouse, and she remembered that her son Billy Ray had said that he wanted a community. If only we had a community center in the neighborhood here, we would have things to do at night, in the afternoon when we get out of school. So she got it together to have this built by Metro Parks in the state. This beautiful community center with a fantastic pool and gym and a kitchen facility and a Boys and Girls Club there. And they had decided that they wanted art in it too. So they built two particularly interesting pieces of art there. One is at the front of the building, and it's a sculpture of Billy Ray by Jasmine Brown, a local artist here. And it's a beautiful bronze of Billy Ray. It's like just perfect. And then in the back of the building, which is kind of like the front because it faces the street that you drive up to, the front of the building, I built Phoenix. And Phoenix is like the story of the rebirth of Billy Ray coming back with the promise of a community center there. Well, actually, it's a very simple process, but it's like you see Mount Everest, like, okay, just go uphill, okay? Just if you go uphill, you'll get there, right? Eventually. But of course, it's not that simple. But the beginning is the same thing. I always begin, or most of the time, you never know where it's going to come. It's a feeling that you have. Okay? It's always a feeling that you have. Like, I feel like I need to make a drawing, or I feel like I saw something that inspires me, or, when I was a little kid, I used to like to design cars and houses. Now it doesn't matter what it is. Now I say, I want to draw a really good bird. I want to draw a really good tree. I want to do this and the other. And it always I just answered my own question. Drawing is at the basis, observation and drawing. You observe stuff, you look at stuff and try to find stuff there, but not in a busy kind of a way, but like an inspirational way. You just let go of your thoughts as much as possible, and you just go, oh, okay, that looks really cool there. Oh, look, that's a little triangle there. Oh, look at that, So you get involved in life, or the trees, or like in the stop motion picture video that you're going to see, you see it's a bird flying through a tree. And one day I was walking down the street, this bird just went flying right through the tree. And you go, I'm an old guy, and yet right now, first time I really notice how birds fly through trees just like that. They don't hit anything. How do they do that? And it was a fascinating, you don't always see it that way. They don't always fly through trees, okay? Sometimes they land on the branches and walk all over the place and go, wah, 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 then walk down to another branch. But from time to time, they do fly right through the trees, right through the branches. And it was such a vivid thing that I went home and I said I had to draw this. And then, of course, the drawing starts with a dot. You start with a dot. And you move that dot along a piece of paper or whatever, a surface of some sort, and you leave a mark. And that mark becomes a shape. And that shape is already a story, very basic, like a cell. And then you add another cell and another cell and another cell until eventually you have this living thing that's really fascinating. And you have a story, and then you've got a tree, and then you've got a bird, and you've got this, and you've got the other, and then it just talks to you, and you have to listen. And with somehow the word "listen" is kind of strange, but it is the right word. You listen to it, you feel it. It'll tell you what it needs, and then you have a debate with yourself. No, that doesn't look right. Oh, it'll look great. Oh, I'm tired. Oh, I should go eat a banana. And then you have to go, okay, no, I'm actually drawing. Do this, do that, overcome your fear. Count backwards from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, do it. Until, you get, and you grow. You grow. You can't help it but grow. Okay, you will grow. You do this. It's a process. You are adding memory to your memory. You're adding karma to your karma. You're adding library to yourself. And I fill sketchbook after sketchbook of drawing ideas wherever I go. I'm like one of those people, you don't want me at your party, because I used to sit there and draw in the corner all the time instead of like talking about sports or anything else, because, well, I can't talk about sports. I don't know anything. One of those geeks used to run to the art room in high school. But it's your library. You have this, it's a beautiful way to record. They're not words. Like you can give somebody a journal of words, and unless there's somebody who's really nerdy about words, they'll go, okay, so what? But you give somebody a book of pictures, they can't help but get the message. We look at Egyptian hieroglyphics, we look at Maya glyphs, and we don't know what they say, but we do see them, and they tell us plenty, because we can't stop looking at them, right? So that's my process. I start from something and let it grow. And I learned along the way that why stop on a piece of paper just drawing? Because people say, are you an acrylic artist? Are you an oil painter? Are you a watercolor artist? And I'm all of that. Artist is about creativity. It's about inspiration. It's about curiosity and building on stuff. So, if you don't like a drawing that you just did on a piece of paper, you can fold it, get a pair of scissors, cut it up, and the little thing will stand up, and all of a sudden you have, oh, that's an Alberta Canada right there. And then it never stops, okay? It only stops when you're tired. Well, sometimes I don't think of community at all. I just think of the drawing that I'm doing. If it looks good or doesn't look good, it feels right, and anything. But I'm not. But we are an animal that is a very social animal. We live in a community. We do all that. But in the end, I don't really think of the community when I'm making the art. I think of the community like if I'm commissioned to do a work of art, they tell me what they want. I go to the meetings with them and they tell me. I say, what do you want? Tell me stories about this community. Tell me everything that, whatever. It could be the story of a rooster that lives next door to a school. And I've had that happen, and we put the rooster in the thing. And then I go to my studio or wherever I go, and I start doodling and drawing and stuff, and it'll come out. Then I'll think about, oh, they said this, they said that. But it's not like, it's not a duty or something. It's not a heavy thing on my mind. I do take the responsibility seriously, but I don't take it in like kind of an academic way. It's like a friendship way. When you think of a friend and you think, what do they like, I mean, it's you and them together. So I think it's a way that we communicate with other people in a fantastic way. It's a way that helps us to see life in unique ways. And it's always refreshing when you see something. Really, I never thought of that way, and you can actually see it. A lot of times, there's some things that you don't see that way, like in science and stuff, or very advanced anything. Only very few people will understand it, right? Only few people will get it. With art, with a simple drawing, you can tell so much and do so much that is friendly. It's a very friendly way to communicate with people and get to know each other. But I always say, I have it right here. I have a sketchbook, sketchbook full of ideas. So wherever you go, you could write down what it is, and then I can show this. Like if you were in a public art committee right now and go, well, look, blah blah blah, and they go, oh, I love that. Well, you don't have to say anymore. I'm busy now. I know what you want. It's not that I'm short of ideas. I think perhaps the biggest obstacle sometimes is one's own self-criticism, but you overcome that, And then you draw, and then you have dinner, and then you go back and do some more work. And like after I get done here, I can't wait to go back and glue some glass that I just got out of the kiln this morning, because it looks beautiful, It's fun. It's a fun job. It's not for everybody. I mean, I think everybody has art in them, but I don't think everybody should strive to become an artist. I think it's something that it takes a special kind of personality to become an artist. Okay, but not to say that you can't be artistic and you can't feel art, but to actually devote your life to art is not for everybody. It's a hard life.